Welcome back to the Badger247 show, part of the 247 Sports Network. I'm Matt Perkins, joined as always by Badger247.com writers Nick Osen and John McNamara. Great to see you guys this week after a week off while Nick was on the road, taking a swing down south. If you haven't checked it out yet, make sure to get his exclusive Marty Latimer coverage. Nick went down and saw Marty in Georgia. And Nick, just quickly before we get into this week's game, just tell us a little bit about that trip.
Yeah, Perko, I appreciate it. Great to be back, on the show with you guys, and it was well worth it, guys. Obviously, part of it, of course, is seeing the player. Marty was awesome. He actually especially impressed as a pass catcher, even at his size, even as a running back. He had a really cool, 62-yard catch and run for a score. So that was awesome. I got some great stuff from his family in terms of interviews. Look at the recruitment. And of course, you build those relationships too. So I would say it was pretty special and well worth it, like you said, Perko. Thank you.
Well, it was a joy to read and to get all of that coverage from you. And as always, all the great stuff coming from Nick and John and Payne over on the site. But this weekend, Wisconsin starts Big Ten play against Maryland. That's still weird for me to say, starting Big Ten play against Maryland. I'll never get used to that. I don't care how many years the Terrapins have been in the conference. It will never feel right to me. That being said, two big injuries on the offense: Jake Renfro and Billy Edwards Jr. John, we will start here. What do you know about the status of either of these guys, and do you think that they will see the field tomorrow?
Yeah, I think both are game time decisions, right? If I had to pick one that I felt a little bit more confident in, probably Jake Renfro. I know that obviously Billy Edwards would probably like to get a crack at his former team there, but I think you look big picture here, and listening to what Luke Fickell had to say on Monday, can you put a guy out there if he's not able to do everything that you're going to ask him to do? That coupled with I don't want to call it a makeshift offensive line, but an offensive line that is still trying to find its footing. I have a hard time seeing Billy Edwards playing this week. When you have the bye week and then you have that brutal October coming up, I think all those factors into sitting one more week, getting that bye, and then unleashing Billy Edwards in October, when I don't want to say it matters more, but you're going to need a healthy Billy Edwards there when you look at those four opponents in October. So if I had to guess, I think Renfro's more of a possibility, but I think both of those guys will be very much game time decisions as we get into Saturday morning.
Yeah, I would just say I agree. I think both will be game time decisions, marked as questionable type of thing. I will say, John, just, asking around a little bit, not a ton, but just kind of keeping my ears open, that sort of thing. Look, as we sit here and record Friday mid-afternoon, I haven't heard of any setbacks for QB1 Billy Edwards Jr. So, of course, as we've reported for weeks now, this was kind of the game I had marked where I would see him returning. And, I'm not putting my name on it, nothing official, anything like that. But if he does not have a setback throughout Friday night and into warm-ups, I wouldn't be shocked to see him, be the guy on Saturday. I think a couple things have kind of pointed to that as well. I totally agree. Game time decision for both. And I'd probably, obviously if Renfro doesn't go, I liked what I saw from Ryan Corey at Alabama.
So it will be Ryan Corey if Renfro isn't able to go. It's like they're not going to go back to Kadonko.
I would be surprised. I think Corey showed out well in his game. It sounded like Coach Fickell was impressed by what he did on Monday when we spoke with him. And, I just think there's a lot of potential with those young guys too.
All right. I would like to see him. I liked him a lot as a recruit. I thought he was someone who could bring a lot to the center position. So it will be, if nothing else, a glimpse into the future with that right side of the offensive line with three redshirt freshmen. So I think, that is definitely something to look forward to. John, what else are you sort of going to be keeping an eye out for in the matchup against Maryland? What are some of the storylines that you're really, keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, I think it's can the secondary bounce back. I don't know that they'll necessarily see receivers like that until Ohio State. Maybe Oregon's got some guys like that. But obviously, I think they performed very well week 2 and week 1 of the season. Can they bounce back? Ricardo Holman. I don't think it's a question mark to say he hasn't played his best football over the last 3 weeks. So, does he step up? Do we see a little bit better play from the safeties? I think Maryland's going to want to get stuff done through the air because they haven't had really a whole lot of success on the ground, early in this season. So that's kind of the position group I'm looking for to step up, probably maybe play to the expectations against Maryland. I think this is a good opportunity for them to to get right there, fix some things, and then like I said, kind of go into that bye week. So my eyes, I think, on that secondary, but I think you could probably make a real strong case for Wisconsin's running game. Maybe that's where Nick goes with his answer.
Yep, two peas in a pod, man. That's Mac. That is what I'm looking for. And frankly, it hasn't been what we expected. I will go to my grave saying that I saw, a lot of run game success at fall camp. These things were not made up. I know what I saw from those backs, and this is a big opportunity here, Perko. And guys, I think the offensive line will be a little bit more settled in. I really do. Maryland's got a lot of talent up front, but so far they've shown a lot of that in the pass rush. I think it's an opportunity to establish the run. And let's be honest, guys, we need to see it at this point, right? And I think if you look on kind of a macro level for a storyline, guys, this is a game I think the Badgers have to have. I'm not sure in my 5, 6 years doing reporting anywhere I've ever called a game a must win. So just in terms of that term. So I always refrain from using it, but that is what I mean essentially with this. It's a game you have to have, not just for morale, not just showing you can bounce back after losses like we didn't always see last year, but as we were talking about ahead of the show and kind of briefly touched on, the schedule does not get easier. In fact, it only gets harder. Specifically, not just opponents, but some of the road matchups. Like Michigan, they've got a big game this weekend, but they seem to be putting some things together. Oregon, you could argue, is the best team in the country right now. So it's a big one, guys. I never talk this way about September games, but it is. I'm confident. And, I'm certainly hopeful for our fans and such on the boards that they're happy with what they see, because I know that Saturday into maybe Monday morning until we turn the page, uh, there was a lot of kind of anger and frustration there, and it started going in the wrong places. So I'm hoping things can chill out a bit.
Yeah, for me, quickly, you mentioned Oregon, Nick. I think they're the best team in the country. They've been the most impressive team to me through 3 weeks. The other thing that I'm curious to see is, can the defense confuse Malik Washington? True freshman quarterback from Maryland, obviously a very highly touted recruit. But if, we talk about the issues in the defensive backfield, John, but if the defensive line can get in his face, if Mike Tressel can call a game plan where Washington can't trust his first read and starts to get in his head a little bit, I think that will go a very far way for the Badgers in this game if they can really knock him out of rhythm early and get him sort of second guessing himself. John, it looked like you were going to say something before I cut you off.
No, you're good. Yeah, I mean, Maryland's offensive line was real bad last year. I don't know that they've improved a ton, but you talk about, a freshman quarterback, first Big Ten road contest he's going to see, giving him some stuff to think about back there, right, Matt? And, with that, you look at Mason Reiger, Sebastian Cheeks, Daryl Peterson, could be potentially big time gains for them. Wisconsin's got the number 4 run defense in the country right now. If you're looking for some positives, so I think they're going to have to. Maryland's going to have to find some ways to move the football likely through the air. So I think those edge guys are going to have some opportunities, and it's going to be on them to capitalize on in. I think you look at advantages. Wisconsin should have an advantage there, and they're going to need to capitalize on that. So we'll see what happens. But I do feel pretty confident about Wisconsin's ability to get to the quarterback, largely because I think they have the guys. But Maryland's offensive line is not an area of strength right now for them.
Yeah, and I think for me, going along with that, Nick, is going to be, are some of the younger faces going to see more snaps? I think, if they mentioned they're going to have a lot of chances for pass rushing, are we going to see more Nick Clayton? Are there any other guys who haven't had a ton of reps through the first 3 games that you expect to see on the field more this weekend, Nick?
Yeah, I think a couple guys that they have had opportunities, but maybe not extensively. Perko, Nick Clayton was a name I mentioned. I don't remember if it was in one of the stories or a radio this week. I like where your head's at there. I think Eugene Hilton Jr. could get some more opportunities, and then also just because, as we know and have hit on, Maryland likes to throw the rock, so maybe you see, a guy like Cairo Skanes potentially, who did travel last weekend to Alabama. Those are some of those players. But I'd like to hit on also what Max said about the secondary. I think this needs to be a much better game, not just to win, obviously, after a matchup like last week, but there are some potent wideouts coming up, kind of like Max said. And you'd like to just, I'm not expecting like a perfect game completely just 180 from last week, but you'd like to see kind of good trajectory and growth in a lot of those areas because as things, settle down for a week, but then you're just boom, ramping up. And you want everything, whether it's wins, losses, health, morale, to be in an ideal spot come October 1.
Yeah, and I think flipping the page forward here, Nick, this is, I think Wisconsin's first sort of big visitor weekend here in the fall. We saw some kids come up for Miami and Middle Tennessee State, but now that they're into the heart of the Big Ten schedule, the kickoff of the Big Ten schedule, they're going to get some more high priority guys, especially we're looking at 27s here. Give us a couple names that you're looking out for this weekend who will be headed up to Camp Randall for the game.
Yeah, Perko, I love it, man. This is a huge weekend. To be honest, like it's an impressive list. I'd say any weekend it'd be pretty good. For this one, Maryland early game, it is really good. So I would say first off, there's a 2026 official visitor. That's out there. We've been hammering on it or alluding to it for weeks. That's cornerback Donovan Dunmore. He has been committed to Oregon State, but I fortunately did a preview with him this week. And, he's basically said he hasn't been hearing from the Beavers quite as much since things have opened up. It's Wisconsin, Kansas State, Michigan State involved, a couple other similar schools. I'm feeling good about where the Badgers sit right now, Perko. And then some huge names in 2027. Izzy Abrams, top 5 quarterback in the country. I got to see him live. I will probably be doing that again here pretty soon. Number one, top of the line, they've got several top targets, but a huge target for Wisconsin and several other teams. But he's one to watch. Of course, Loken, top 247 tight end. Cole Ryder, we've talked about a ton on this show. I'll save a couple for Mac to hit on too. I know he loves some in-state guys. I'll note Kingston Miles, running back from Missouri. But it's a great list, and it's a list that, look, it's early for those guys, but I think the Badgers sit pretty well. The 2 biggest names I'm watching, though, Dunmore because it's a 26 OB and Abrams just because you don't get that type of talent on campus all the time.
Yeah, Nick snatched them all up for me, but I would echo what he's saying with Dunmore. Wisconsin's they need some good news on the recruiting front, right? I mean, they ended June with a bang. You get Amari Latimer. You miss on some guys. July's quiet. Now you're coming into the fall. I mean, they need some good news. I think they do get that from Dunmore, who's a kid. The more tape I watch on him, the more I like him. He's a track guy. He doesn't have that big 6'3", 190-pound frame, but I think he'd be a nice addition to that cornerback class next to Carson Elam's. They've been looking for a guy, going back to the spring to be that guy next to Elam's, and I don't want to say this is a done deal or everything's set. It's just a matter of time. But from the people I talked to, and Nick could probably say the same. Wisconsin feels good about where they are going into that visit, and I think Nick brought up an interesting thing that I was told too. It's like Oregon State. I don't want to say they gave up, but he's been on record saying they haven't really talked to me since then. So, it's not, I don't want to say he's a man without a home right now, but I think he's a man looking for a new one. Kansas State is involved there. But I think he'd be a really nice addition to this class, provide some versatility, some true track time, track speed that he's bringing to the table too. So that'd be a nice pull for Wisconsin. In when you traditionally don't get guys up for OVs in the fall. Wisconsin's traditionally kind of taking care of their work in the summer. There's maybe just one or two OVs in the fall. I think we'll get a little bit more of that as this fall progresses, more home games at Wisconsin. But this will be a nice addition to a class in a time where the Badgers need some good news right now.
What about Brody Jones? Is he still set to come this weekend, John? I saw you had mentioned that last week on the boards.
Yeah, I think he was mentioned as a potential guy this weekend, but it sounds more like Iowa. I think that Iowa could have a few OVs, and I think he'll be one of them for Iowa. But like you're talking about, a safety committed to Cincinnati right now. Wisconsin's offered a handful of other schools, but sounds like Iowa right now due to some scheduling, not issues, but just trying to make sure the schedules match up.
Gotcha. Iowa always seems to get the safeties. They always get crazy safeties. So he's an intriguing prospect to me for sure. But a lot of great guys on coming this weekend. Nick, you mentioned Israel Abrams. I think that's a huge pull to get that caliber quarterback. Uh, you know, early in this, relatively early in the process for something like that, I think is a really good sign. You like where things stand between him and Kenny Guyton right now, especially. But let's flip it from guys who are visiting Wisconsin to guys who are playing in Wisconsin on Friday night. So far, through what are we, 3 weeks through the WIAA schedule, 4 weeks through the WIAA schedule, or yeah, I think it's four. Um, there's been a lot of, I don't want to say upheaval, but a lot of interesting results. And so I guess, John, what I want to ask you is sort of like, what have been the biggest things you've noticed sort of a third of the way through the season here? A little more, probably a little less than that, but 25%, 30% of the way through the season here, Wisconsin high school football. What's standing out to you, whether it's a player, a team, or whatever?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think maybe my biggest takeaway from 4 weeks in here is that I don't know, specifically at the higher end, like from the Division 1 field, if there's that no doubt top of the hill world beater out there, right? I mean, you can make a case for, I don't know, 8, 9 schools, 10 schools that have a really good shot of making it to Madison. We might get some more clarity in a couple hours here after the dust settles with Arrowhead and Muskego. That's going to be a really, really good football game. Arrowhead's right now, I think, depending where you look, rated as the number 1 team in Division 1, and they got some dudes on both sides of the ball as they usually do. But I mean, Muskego is just as tough as it gets, right? Year in and year out. I don't know that Muskego has a headliner right now in terms of a no doubt D1 guy like a Hunter Wohler or guys that they've had in the past, but that should be an excellent matchup tonight and one that I would imagine a lot of the state has their eyes on. But yeah, I think to answer your question, I don't know that there's a team that you say, yeah, this team is head and shoulders above the rest. We expect them to get to Camp Randall. I think you can make a case for a number of teams at those higher division levels right now, and that makes the fall that much more exciting for fans, I think.
Yeah, Nick, what have you got there for us on high school football? I mean, you've been traveling out of state a little bit more than most, so you haven't had to see as many games in person.
I'm fortunate to get kind of a nice balance of in-state coverage and out of state. I think it's been 5 weeks, 4 different states of coverage. I think that's right. So I'm fortunate. One team that I've had my eyes on is Catholic Memorial. I know Mac got to see them very early on. I will be heading there next week to obviously see Isaac Miller. A couple other names I'm following, Dustin Roach, but it's going to be really intriguing, to watch them. So I want to see that. And then a game that I don't believe we'll have eyes on. I'm covering some basketball this afternoon, and you never want to overwhelm the guys. Like we've interviewed these guys combined, I think 3 times in the last 3 or 4 weeks, but still a great matchup to note. Two good programs and really, really good young offensive linemen. Cole Ryder and Germantown taking on the Mallinger twins at Sussex Hamilton. Friday as we record Friday night. So that should be really intriguing. Germantown got off to the slow start I was at this fall, but then bounced back. Sussex seems to be rolling. I enjoyed, Max reporting from that recently. So it'll be intriguing. Catholic Memorial coming up. Some more Illinois recruits coverage I'll be getting to as well. So it's always a blast. But this weekend will be a little more oriented toward Badgers game, of course, and then Mac and I hitting the phones, catching up with some recruits, man.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate everything you guys are doing, and we appreciate everyone for tuning in here to the Badger247 show. Make sure that you are subscribed to Badger247.com for all of that great coverage from Nick and John and Payne. And let's face it, the best message boards around. We'll be back again next week with more Badger coverage, more recruiting coverage, and more Wisconsin high school football. So until then, for John McNamara and Nick Osen, I'm Matt Perkins, and we'll see you on the boards.